Thanks, Sean. Team of the week, not a one that many would pick necessarily. A team that has been struggling all year. They're one of their worst years in several seasons, but a resounding week for a resilient team, and they're back in the picture, back in the chance to make the NCAA tournament. That's the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Two wins against top 12 teams in the country at home in their last two games. First one was a nice, convincing win against Texas Tech at home, or excuse me, against Kansas State at home, and Coach Tang's team, which is kind of falling apart in the last couple of weeks. They lost again last night, but then the crucial win for the Texas Tech Red Raiders came on Monday with a big win over the Texas Longhorns. They got off to a big lead. The Longhorns got pretty close towards the end of the first half, but then the Red Raiders were able to close it out in the second half, and it looked very convincing. So a huge win for them against the top team in the conference, along with the sixth team in the country. So two big wins for them. And Sean, they're not out of it now. They've got three very winnable games coming up. And to be honest, Sean, if they win four out of their last five games, which is very doable for Texas Tech coming down the stretch, they're a tournament team. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I think if they go 3-5, they've got a chance that they do some damage in the Big 12 tournament. But you looked at their last five games and they have three wins against top 20 opponents. I get it; they're all at home, and they were really, really close to picking off that win at Oklahoma State. They get that win, Sean. I think they're in the tournament as is. But upcoming, I like their chances on the road at Oklahoma. I like their chances at home against Oklahoma State, and I like their chances at home against TCU. So they can pick off those three games and then either beat West Virginia or Kansas at Fog Island. I love their chances of being in the tournament. Over. Yeah, and it was interesting that in that game is that UVA or not UVA, excuse me, the ACC went out and even admitted that the refs made the wrong call. Conferences never do that, especially in this age when people are very critical of officials. And I understand it's a tough job, but this was just such a blatantly bad call that even the ACC said, "Hey, we were wrong," and it really bailed out UVA. Would have been a huge win for Duke, a win that they really needed to have because it's been a very lackluster season for them. And they're really a bad loss away from being a bubble team. Um, but no, no, hey, yeah. But I mean, last night was not pretty. Yeah, though just last night was not pretty. Yeah, I mean, they barely squeaked by at home. Maybe a little bit more pressure because Coach K was in the building, but I don't really buy that. You're talking about a pretty bad Notre Dame team, and they just squeaked by there at home. Yeah. Yeah, we've been talking about it all year. The expectation for them at the start of the year was to win the national championship. They were the clear-cut favorite, and all of a sudden, I mean, struggling big time. It's really been a struggle all year. I don't think that Hubert Davis is on the hot seat because they made it to the championship game last year. But in his two seasons at UNC, uh, two of the worst regular seasons that UNC basketball has had in years. So I'm not saying the two worst, but they're certainly up there. They had that big win against Clemson this weekend. I really thought that was a statement win. I was going to springboard them forward after they had three straight losses. But, um, you know, come Monday this week, Miami took it to them on their home floor. So they've got a couple good chances coming up. They're going to have NC State on the road on Sunday, their crosstown rival, which is going to be a huge, huge game for them. If they can pick that one off, that's big. But the rest of the year, UVA, Florida State, and then they get to host the Duke Blue Devils. So, yeah, I think it's time to get a little bit concerned because three of their last five games are against tournament teams. Um, and if they lose two of those, Sean, where does that put them? Yeah, Clemson, right? They play more than three quad one games. Yeah, yeah, they're not. Yeah, and the production out of yeah, and what I would say, Baycott with UNC, he was supposed to be preseason player of the year. He has not been at that level this year. It's not necessarily his fault. They really have not given him chances to succeed down low. Um, so it really is one of the most disappointing teams that we've seen in years. This UNC basketball team this year, in a not very deep conference. So I mean, we'll see what happens. But I'm not feeling too good if I'm a Tar Heel fan right now. Yeah, I mean this Big 12 is just unbelievable, Sean. Now we're talking about 9 out of 10 teams in the conference that have a legitimate chance at the NCAA tournament. Oklahoma doesn't really have one right now, and that's the team that's beaten the current number one team in the country, right? By 24 points. And it's just crazy to think that. Um, we've already made parallels to this being like the Big East conferences in the late 2000s or late 2010s before they had the split off with the American. What I'd say is unique about this Big 12 conference is that you still had the DePauls, the South Floridas, Georgetown was bad every now and then. So you had some pretty easy cupcake games in that old Big East conference that you do not have in this Big 12 because you play every single team twice a year, once at home and once on the road. And that's what makes this conference so elite, Sean. So much movement this week because of Texas's loss to Texas Tech. And we talk about Tech being back, but there's now a three-way tie at the top of the conference between the three teams that were the preseason top three in the Big 12. All teams in the top 10. And this is despite the Baylor Bears. They're one of these teams. They're tied with Kansas and the Texas Longhorns. But people forget Baylor was 0-3 to start this conference season. They were off to a horrendous start. It looked like the wheels were maybe going to fall off for the Bears, but they've won 10 out of 11 games, 9 out of 10 in conference. And I mean, they got a huge game on Saturday against Kansas to see who's going to be one of the top two teams in the conference. So a huge opportunity for them. But, even despite their loss to Kansas and a tough game at home, Oklahoma State is probably still the hottest team in the Big 12 right now. I mean, they are on a roll. I understand they're 16-10, 7-6 in conference, but they are just crazy hot right now, playing a lot of really quality basketball. I don't want to play them right now if I'm another team. Um, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's actually four out of five. So I am, I'm a little worried. Now, two of those losses or last two have been on the road, but those are the teams that you're supposed to beat. You're supposed to beat the 9 and 10 teams in the conference if you're looking at making the tournament. And they just lost to both of them on the road. So they've got a home game against Iowa State this weekend before they go home, stay at home to take on Baylor. Um, but the schedule, they got a couple games where you look at them, you think, "Oh, that's probably a win." I think you look at Iowa State at home, that's a win. I think you look at Oklahoma at home, that's a win. Those are nice revenge games. But at West Virginia, at Oklahoma State, and at Baylor, or sorry, home versus Baylor, those are three games that I'm not feeling too good about from K State fan right now. So I really hope for their sake that they didn't play their best basketball in mid January. But Sean, it's starting to look like maybe they did. And that's very concerning right now for them coming down the stretch. 10th. Now, Sean, I was going to ask if you had to pick your team that you think is going to end up winning the conference at the end of the season. Who do you think it's going to be? You've got three teams tied at the top, and Iowa State, if they win tonight, they'll be one game back, so they're right there. Absolutely. Yeah. I actually think it's Texas. And the reason being is I like Texas's schedule coming down the stretch. They've got at home against Oklahoma, home against Iowa State, which we have said is just not a good team on the road. And they've got Kansas, but that game's at home as well. They're tough games coming down the stretch at Baylor, at TCU. I think they drop one of those games, but I like their chances. The team that I don't like, my Baylor Bears, coming down the stretch, Sean, take a listen to this schedule at Kansas, then they are at Kansas State, the two toughest, I would argue, two of the toughest places to play in the country right there. Then they host Texas. Then they go at Oklahoma State, which is probably the hottest team in the Big 12. And then they host Iowa State at the end. So an absolute brutal schedule for the Bears in their next four. That's why I don't like them to win the regular season conference. I still think they can do some damage in the tournament. But I mean, that is just a beast of a schedule coming down the stretch. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I mean, Sean, it seems like it changes every time we talk in this podcast. Providence just had a huge win yesterday. That nice win against Creighton, 94-86, kind of offensive shootout. Um, you like them, but you also don't like that they also just lost to St. John's. That's not a game that you expect the top team in your conference to lose, especially with the lackluster season that the Johnnies have had. Sean, I still think it's Marquette. Uh, I think that win last night, a nail biter against Xavier, to me, that solidified that they're, at least for now, the team to beat in the Big East. That loss to UConn by 15 points is obviously a little bit of a head scratcher, but I love the Golden Eagles. I think they're the best team, and an incredible job that Shaka Smart has done there to resurrect that program. Crazy. No, no. And Sean, I know this might be a little preemptive, but I could honestly see this year being the year that we have a Cinderella team go and win the Big East tournament. There are a couple of teams here that are flying under the radar that are still playing some good basketball that I could see making a run in the tournament, i.e., Villanova, i.e., St. John's, i.e., Butler. Butler is a team that all of a sudden is starting to play some pretty solid basketball. They lost last night to Villanova, but wins over Xavier, St. John's in their last couple of games. They played really tight against Marquette. Marquette kind of just slid by them to win that one. So I like the way that they're playing. I also like the way Villanova is playing. They've kind of hung around this year. They're still 7-8 in the Big East. They don't really have a chance to make the big dance unless they get that auto bid. But I could see him making a run, Sean. They've won three straight. They're looking pretty solid right now. Yeah. Yeah. It always is. Yeah. I want to say tough games on the road, Sean. Everybody goes through a rough patch in the season. And for them, the Northwestern game was a little bit inexcusable. They were up big. Northwestern closed out on, I think, on a 17-3 run. You can't get dominated like that at the end of the game if you're a championship team. That's just bottom line. But Zach Edey is still playing player of the year caliber in the last several games. Wasn't as explosive on the boards against Northwestern, but I think this is still a very good Purdue team. And it is interesting. We were talking earlier, Sean, before we started the podcast, is who is the number one team in the country right now? And Purdue certainly isn't playing like it right now. Purdue is lost 2 of 3 now. They're still a very good team. Don't get me wrong, but are they the best team in the country? I don't know. I'm going to chalk it up like it's just been a couple of bad games. They're 23-3 this year, so they've been pretty damn good. But we'll see coming down the stretch if they are truly the team to beat. Yeah. Yeah, but Purdue is beating. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Northwestern's beating the brakes off of Indiana right now. It's not even close. Yeah, 33-17. Yikes. Yeah. Uh, It's, it's interesting to see Maryland really kind of come back into the picture. They've played, we were lamenting earlier in early mid January how they had already played their best basketball of the season. But they've really stayed the course, and given they've played some of the easier teams in the conference lately, They've actually won five out of their last six, and as it stands right now, they are the fourth seed in the Big Ten tournament, which is crazy to think, Sean. Um, my question to you, though, who do you think is the second best team in the conference? I would have said going into today that it's got to be Indiana, but I don't know if that's the answer, especially with how they're looking right now against Northwestern. Obviously, a lot of basketball still left to be played. They're late in the first half. Northwestern with a 16-point advantage, but um, is Indiana the second best? Yeah. No question. And Sean, I would say it is so tough to pick the number two team in the Big Ten because across the board, from like the number two seed right now in the tournament to like the number 10 seed in the tournament right now, the Big Ten is just incredibly inconsistent this year. And that is a testament to a lot of solid teams in the Big Ten. But, Northwestern, they got the brakes blown off of them just before they got under this big streak, this 3-game win streak that they're on right now. 16-point loss at Iowa, 17-point loss at home against Michigan. Those are, either bubble or tournament teams right now, but that's still incredibly not impressive. I think a couple of games ago, you may have said, "Hey, Illinois might be the best team in the Big E or Big Ten, or the second best team in the Big Ten." But they just got, swept by Penn State. They lost their second straight game to them. They have looked very spotty at times. I think if Illinois is playing their best basketball, they are the second best team in the Big Ten. But they're just so inconsistent that there's no way they are. So for me right now, yeah, that's the issue with them. You just don't know which team's going to show up. It, ever since he's been in Illinois, Coach Underwood has struggled in the tournament. They've underperformed both times that they've been in. So Illinois has the capability to be the second best team in the Big Ten. Don't get me wrong, but they are not there right now. By no means are they there. Um, Sean, I actually think it is Northwestern that is the second best. It's a toss up, I think, between them and Indiana, and we'll see how this game plays out. But I think winning this game at home, coupled with their win at IU earlier this year, I think for me that submits that at least at the moment, Northwestern is the second best team in the Big Ten. We'll see if that lasts. They've got some very losable games coming down the stretch at Illinois, at Maryland, at Rutgers. So we'll see if that holds up for them. But they're playing really well at home right now. Yeah, they just got to get to halftime. The Hoosiers. No. Yeah. 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 I mean, Tennessee was desperate. They just lost two straight games on a buzzer beater after time expired. So they were in need and they answered the call. Rick Barnes' crew really got fired up for this one. So a big, much needed win. But look, the Texas Ags, A&M Aggies, they're they're not the second best team in the SEC. That's for sure. I don't even think they're the fourth or the fifth best team in the SEC. They've they've been put in a position where they have gotten a cupcake schedule in the SEC, and that's why they're sitting at where they are. Um, I mean, just off the rip, Sean, Alabama, Tennessee, Auburn, Missouri, Arkansas are all better teams than Texas A&M, and they will all get in the NCAA tournament ahead of Texas A&M. They just happen to be the two seed because of their lucky schedule, and the luck's about to run out because they're going at Missouri, this Tennessee, at Miss State, and then home versus Alabama. Those are four of their last five games to close. So right now, with a three-game lead over Tennessee with five to go, absolutely. Alabama's it is their conference to lose, and they did lose tonight. To be fair, but I still don't think they're going to have a very hard time wrapping up the conference season. I think this was their first loss in the conference season this year. Obviously, they lost to Oklahoma a few weeks back, but that was in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. They've impeccable until today, and they've got a couple of games that you expect them to get rebounds on. Home versus UGA this Saturday, then they travel to Columbia to take on the South Carolina Gamecocks. They're the second worst team in the SEC right now, so you like their chances to rebound, Sean. And yeah, no issues with them rolling the rest of the year. Yeah. Yeah, and I would say, Sean, in my question right now in the SEC, and this is with Alabama, just to go back to it, do you think they're the best team in the country? No, I don't think they will. I think it's them, or I think it could be Kansas. I think you look, Houston's really kind of gotten away with being a very beneficiaries of a pretty cupcake conference schedule. They've played some games that have been really tight that should not have been, and they kind of squeaked by. Purdue's not feeling like the best team in the country right now. They've lost two, three. UCLA, they're kind of also the beneficiaries of a pretty cupcake schedule. And then you got the Kansas Jayhawks sitting at number five that I think have had by KenPom the third toughest schedule in the NCAA this year. And they've done pretty well with it, winning some big games so far. So to me, in my mind, it's either the Crimson Tide from Alabama or it's Kansas, despite having more losses than some of those teams ahead of them. Yeah. Yeah. No. A bloodbath. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're looking at an old Nick Saban beat down. Yeah. Yeah. That loss to LMU was just shocking. So we're talking now. LMU is just the giant killers right now in the WCC, um, with that win over St. Mary's. Now, I think they're still the team to beat in the conference. I just kind of feel like, oh man, here you go again. Gonzaga got the foot in the door now. They got a great chance to win the conference now. All they got to do is beat St. Mary's, and they get at least a share at this point, presuming that they win every game the rest of the year. Um, but with that being said, I think this is still St. Mary's to lose. It's going to be really tough playing the Kennel on the final game of the WCC season. Um, and I know St. Mary's really wants to win that, especially with talks of Gonzaga going to the Big 12 pretty soon. Those talks are heating up right now. But I still like Gonzaga. They have taken their punches this year, but for the most part, they're still playing very solid basketball this year. They still kind of rolled through the WCC. They've had a couple of hiccups, almost lost to BYU, but they're still going to be a force in March, Sean. I absolutely believe they will. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it seems like a real pillow fight right now on the bubble this year. In years past, you've seen a lot of teams play themselves into the tournament, um, like Notre Dame and Rutgers last year. You're not seeing that this year. Uh, Clemson's fallen apart. Wisconsin's been sluggish all year. You're looking at Kentucky; they've fallen apart. Utah State's fallen apart. Carolina's fallen apart. Really, the only team, Sean, that's on the bubble right now that has exceeded expectations since the conference season is A&M and USC. USC's had a couple of huge wins in the conference that's bolstered them, like their win against UCLA a couple weeks ago. So, other than that, it's really just teams slipping up and finding their way into this position, stumbling into the bubble, so to speak. Um, One thing I like to point out, Sean, is I think there are probably 10 teams right now that have a legitimate chance at getting a top seed in the NCAA tournament. We don't usually see that this late in the year, but with teams like Alabama and Houston and Purdue slipping up in uncharacteristic moments, that has opened up the field to teams like all of a sudden, I think Tennessee still has a chance at a one seed because of their win tonight at home. I definitely think that Baylor, Texas, and Kansas all have chances. If UVA runs the table in the ACC, you never know with them. So while our top three has been pretty solidified, there definitely is room for the entire top 10 to get that top one seed in the tournament. Ooh, okay, Sean. Yeah, this is a huge game for Indiana. And not only is this a big rivalry game in the Big Ten, but this is also um, potentially a huge bounce back spot. They're down 19 right now to Gonzaga, so and that's at halftime right now, 39-20. So personally, Sean, I don't see them coming back from 19 points on the road at Northwestern. So this is going to be a big comeback game for them to really show what it's worth. And I'm going to go with the losers in this one. Unfortunately, I really want to go with my Illinois Fighting Illini, but I just don't think Illinois is going to be playing their perfect basketball. Yes, they did. Yeah, I mean this is a much needed win for Kentucky, especially playing at home. I like Oscar Tshiebwe to put up some big numbers in this one, and I like Kentucky to stick around. But I'm also at the end of the day going to go with the favorites. I think that Rocky Top gets the job done in tennis and in Kentucky. Yeah. Mm. I was going with the upsets today. Yeah, halftime. Yeah, Sean, just like what you said, Iowa State has been insufferable on the road this year. They've lost a lot of consecutive road games. They're looking good right now. They're going to get a much needed bounce back win against TCU at home. Iowa State has lost four out of their last five, so they really needed a win here in this spot. TCU does as well, but I think it's going to be Iowa State that it falls once again to Kansas State. Kansas State also, we talked about, they've lost 4 out of 5. They're really in desperate need of a win. And I think Coach Tang's team is going to get the dub here. Sean, nothing would make me happier than to pick my Baylor Bears on this Saturday, but I just think at Fog Allen, they lost the Bears early. I just have to go with the Kansas Jayhawks. Their guard play, I think, can match up really well with Baylor's. I think the difference for Baylor of late has been the addition of Jonathan Tchamwa Tchatchoua coming back against the Texas Tech game. And well, yeah, for one, he makes threes, which is just crazy to me after watching him play for 3 years. But the big thing for what Tchamwa Tchatchoua adds is the physicality to this Baylor team. And don't get me wrong, I think that's going to be huge in this one. But I just see the Jayhawks pulling out the tough win at home. I truly do think that KU is, if not the best, the second best team in the country right now, playing really good basketball. Got over the typical mid-conference season slump, and they're off to the races. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 Hey, Sean, I think I lost you there for a second. I in this game, I got to say that I like NC State in this one. I understand that they had that loss Saturday against Syracuse, really tough loss. You may have alluded to earlier, I couldn't really hear you, but Syracuse, or excuse me, NC State does not play well against the zone defense. We've seen that a lot. Um, but I think NC State's going to get the bounce back and put more questions into whether UNC is a tournament team or not. Yeah, TCU really needs one, especially because it's not looking good for them right now. They too have lost 4 out of 5. I think it's about 5 out of 6, and they got to play a streaking Oklahoma State team at home, which that could be 6 out of 7 losses right there. That's my prediction. Um, this is a huge one for them. They've played well against Kansas in the past at home. They actually beat Kansas by a very wide margin earlier this year at Fog Allen. They beat them by 23 points at Kansas. But I think Kansas is ready for some revenge. But I'm going to pull the upset here, Sean. I'm going to go with the TCU Horned Frogs to pick up a huge, much-needed win in Fort Worth and give the Baylor Bears a chance to get back in to win the Big 12 championship after their loss earlier.